What you need to know, Cirque du Soleil is coming. That's what that was about. Okay, we're back here in studio. Debt management, the experts, Blair Manton, Sands & Associates, joining us again. We're going to focus in on bankruptcy today and a lot of the basics, because there is some misunderstanding when it comes to bankruptcy.
Yeah.
What do people really need to know?
Yeah, well, it's a scary term, right? You know, people are very worried. They have a concept of what bankruptcy means, but the reality is it's generally way less obtrusive, way less of a permanent impact than you think. It's something that gets you back to owing nobody anything, and it's something that up to 10% of the population is going to have a debt problem in their life. So if it's not you, it could be someone in your family or your friends. So it's good to be aware of what are the options out there and how do they work.
So if you're overwhelmed with debt, you know, one of the things that stood out to me is you don't need a lawyer or a court date, but you need a licensed insolvency trustee. That's you. How does the process work if that is the best choice?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people think you need to sort out a bankruptcy lawyer, a bankruptcy attorney, and that's just not a thing in Canada. You do find bankruptcy lawyers, but they're more for corporations. For an individual, you need to see a licensed insolvency trustee. There's 1,000 licensed insolvency trustees in Canada, a bunch of them in BC. They'll all meet with you for a free individual consultation to tell you your options. And if you do need to file for bankruptcy, it's pretty rare you actually have to attend in court. A trustee is going to do everything on your behalf. You'll deal with the trustee. And people are amazed to learn, Riaz, most people finish a bankruptcy in 9 months. We're not talking 6, 7, 10 years. We're talking 9 months from a start to a finish with a new lease on life.
Well, some of the people get concerned about the fact that you're going to lose all of your assets if you go through this process. What is the reality? 9 months, that's a truncated amount of time to get a reset, but what is the reality of what you currently have?
Yeah, the reality is most people keep all of their assets during a bankruptcy. So it's a big myth that the trustee shows up and takes everything that you own. There's provincial legislation that sets out a minimum level of assets that everybody's entitled to retain, and it just makes sense. You're allowed to keep your household furniture, you're allowed to keep your clothing, you're allowed to keep your RRSPs, which most people don't know, but they should. Don't cash in your retirement to pay debt. You're allowed to keep tools of the trade. The government wants you to reestablish yourself. If you took everything away from you, how are you going to reestablish yourself after a bankruptcy?
What about those that have questions about their credit report and how that's impacted?
Yeah, there is a credit impact, and that's the price of going bankrupt, is the people that you've borrowed money from and can't pay back. They're going to put a notation on there. After you finish a bankruptcy, for the next 6 years, it's going to show that you've been in bankruptcy, but thinking things through here, you owe nobody anything after a bankruptcy. If you take the right steps to rebuild your credit, even 2 years after a bankruptcy, you could be considered for a mortgage. You'll probably have offers of credit, so the real key is just to do things different the second time around, but it's far from a life sentence. Everybody gets credit again after a bankruptcy.
And that's interesting too, because if your reality is you're not paying those creditors back on the regular, that's going to impact your credit report as well. Well, there are some keys of the key ways bankruptcy does affect you. You've talked about this. Your debts are forgiven, and creditors, they can't contact you.
That's right. So that's just huge, right? Most people, when they come into my office, the stress is just overwhelming. They're not sleeping, maybe stomach problems, heart problems, all that stuff. As soon as you file bankruptcy, you get relief. That's that bankruptcy protection type of concept. The trustee gets in between you and your creditors, and you only have to deal with the trustee, and the trustee is going to be very straightforward, compassionate, empathetic type of person. So you get relief during the process, and then at the end of it, the whole point is you get out of a debt. So your credit cards, your student loans, your income taxes, just about every debt that makes sense, you're able to discharge or get rid of as part of a bankruptcy proceeding. You get back to zero, you start again.
What about those that are concerned that, hey, this could impact my partner, and my partner is going to have the bankruptcy notation as well?
That's a huge concern. It stops people from taking action. And, you know, sometimes one partner should go bankrupt. The other partner works like heck to try to help them pay off the debt, which they could do, but they should know the facts. The facts are one spouse filing bankruptcy, zero impact on the other spouse. If there's no co-signed debts, there's nothing that's going to impact the other person's debts, and there's never any impact one person's credit rating to another. That's an individual thing.
Changing employers, does it impact you in that context?
Not at all. Most people think I'm going to phone up their employer and say, hey, he went bankrupt. Nothing like that. The only time I ever contact an employer is if your wages are already getting taken because the government's seizing them or you've been taken to court. I put a stop to that. Otherwise, most people go bankrupt. Their employer is never notified. They can change employers. They can do whatever they need to do. I deal with the debt. They're able to still earn their income.
And I guess final point, if you're going through what you mentioned, the 9-month process, travel plans, are you able to leave Canada while this is going on?
Absolutely. No impact on passport, no impact on citizenship. A bunch of these concepts, we think bankruptcy is more than it is. It's a very discreet, private process.
Okay. A lot of information you shot away. If you are looking for more information, sandstrustee.com. Blair Manton and his crew have all kinds of resources for you. Blair, appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
We'll take a break. Your top news stories coming up, and we'll